All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're checking out this video, make sure you hit subscribe because we're going to have a lot of great interviews to come. This is Jamie Campbell. She's a clinical integrative nutritionist, takes people through a personalized journey to transform their life through nutrition and just getting people empowered, right? So this is such a treat for you all. She is an amazing personality in the nutrition field, and I'm so excited to get to talk to you, Jamie. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So I wonder if we could just start off, would you tell us a little bit about how you started to do what you do? Start there, okay?
Yeah. So what got me into nutrition, at the time, what kind of like motivated me to get into nutrition is that in undergrad, I was actually majoring in marine biology, but at the same time, I was actually competing for my first physique competition. And I would say that kind of what opened me up into the world of nutrition, just understanding and seeing how food choices impacts the body, not just from like an aesthetic standpoint, but even with how I feel. Prior to that, I never gave two thoughts to nutrition. I was a very active child. And so pretty much anything I ate kind of ran right through me because I was extremely active. Come college, much like many individuals, you gain like the 20 freshman 15, and that kind of made you start realizing, oh, okay, my choices has an impact on my body. It wasn't until I took on the challenge of the physique competition where I really made the connection. And then as a result, shifted to the world of nutrition and decided to take that on as my vocation and career path. So I would say that was kind of where I first started.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's fascinating. As a woman in her 50s right now, I'm expressly trying to put on more muscle. And now I understand, and there's a lot more research than when I was young about how we can influence the promotion of muscle growth. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about that as we go through. But I know that you've also had some experiences kind of in conventional nutritional like weight loss clinic. Tell us a little bit about that and what that was like.
Yeah, so I have some experience in a medically supervised weight loss clinic that promoted a specific dietary protocol as a means for metabolic syndrome reversal.
Right. And so metabolic, just for everybody who's watching, metabolic syndrome is being when people have like problems with their sugar and their cholesterol and their blood pressure, basically. So all those things we want to lower, and we kind of lump them together into what we call metabolic syndrome. And so you were helping people with improving diabetes, improving blood pressure, losing weight, improving their cardiovascular system, but through a medical supervision program. Okay. All right.
Through a medical supervision program that had a set type of dietary protocol that they promoted in adjunct to pharmaceutical medications. And so the two hand in hand were promoted as a way to, attain better blood pressure, attain improved cholesterol levels, improved body weight, so on and so forth. So I would say that would be my first kind of dip in the water when it comes to the clinical world of nutrition from a conventional standpoint.
Right. Well, it's so interesting. I mean, I think probably you and I are at the same point, recognizing that kind of approach may work for a short period of time, but there are quite a few drawbacks. And I imagine you probably saw them with the people you're working with. Anytime somebody says rigid program, I always feel like, rigid program. So guys, we want to talk today about how you can improve diabetes and that sort of thing using functional medicine, using food. And that is our focus because, Jamie's got that experience. This is something I've done in my clinic before too, but now I have such a different approach, which sounds much more like Jamie's approach. So now you are seeing people in that medically supervised clinic.
Correct.
And tell me what was the thought process there for you personally, what you saw happening.
So obviously with what we know, just given our educational background and experience, it's always a lot more nuanced than what people either are willing to promote, and secondly, from a client standpoint, what people are willing to understand and accept.
Yeah.
I think usually people want a streamlined, singular reason as to why and how they can attain the goal that they want out of health sovereignty and improving their metabolic markers. But the reality is that's not the case. When it comes,
there's not a one size fits all. Is that what
it's not a one size fits all. It's
Yeah.
not, this is the reason why I am the way I am in health nowadays. That's just not the reality. And I think the reason why people don't want to maybe accept that is because it takes a lot more work, right? To get all the pieces together to fit that puzzle to attain that goal that you want to attain. And ultimately that takes a degree of patience, and it takes a degree of work. But that's just the reality, especially if you want it to be a sustainable, lifelong alteration so that you can live your most optimized life,
Right. Because man cannot live by broccoli alone.
Right.
You know?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, my experience with the weight loss clinic, albeit there was many positives that came out of that. The frustrating bit of it for me was that I did not feel that they empowered people with the right tools and the right knowledge to be able to take that and move it forward in a sustainable manner.
Right. Right.
And that's the unfortunate part, I think, about the conventional approach to weight management and metabolic syndrome reversal, is that it's very much a one and done type of situation, rather than a continual building upon a solid foundation that they then, as an individual, can feel comfortable and empowered and good about how they can move forward.
Right. So, and I imagine that what we need, everybody, is a clear path forward that you can do and you can continue to do, right? So that, I feel like that is always a layering approach. And so I'm imagining that, and then it's individual, what are the big things going on for each person, and what's what's the biggest bang for the buck, right? If we can move someone off of soda. I mean, for instance, simple things, that are going to bring the most change in a person's life, which, you guys, if you're consuming soda, that would be one. I think that Dr. Hyman talks about that being one of those places where you can get somebody a lot of traction. But when you're working with someone, then, and let's say they come in with metabolic syndrome and you're going to use a functional nutrition approach, right? Integrative nutrition. What kind of places do you like to start with people?
Myself?
Yeah.
From a functional medicine approach, what I try to figure out when I work with individuals is, where are the deficits from an organ system standpoint?
Yes.
Because all of these add up together to present in health the issues that they currently are having. And that's the issue when it comes to conventional medicine. It's they don't understand it's the sum of all the pieces, right? It's usually just this one thing, and we're going to correct this one thing through some sort of very impossibly sustainable way of nutrition, and we're going to take a bunch of meds at it. But the reality is it all works in concert together. Right. So from a functional perspective, I really try to figure out, okay, where is it going awry? What organ systems do we need to support, rather than further berate with depletion, in order to get everything to kind of just start working a little bit more efficiently, and a little bit, because progress begets progress, right? And so when things feeling better, people are more motivated, people see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, and then they understand how their choices, and feel empowered with knowing what choices to make to keep that ball rolling.
Right. And that kind of brings me to my little, I guess would be my one big biohack when we're trying to influence metabolic syndrome and sugar levels, is a continuous blood glucose monitor. This is something that years ago, only people with an insulin pump would ever get. Now it is the one way that you guys can get immediate feedback on, okay, that cheesecake raised my blood sugar to this,
Mhm.
and that pizza raised my blood sugar to this. And surprisingly, the cheesecake might not even raise it as much as the pizza, right? So we start to learn what are the nuances of our body are with regards to what we're putting in it. I love this idea, this big shift you're talking about from we're not going to like take stuff away. We want to nourish. We want to fix the what's deficient.
Mhm.
And I think that's a very different way of thinking of it. I mean, I also would always add, like, try and add what's missing before I'm taking anything away. So you guys, when I talked about taking away your soda, we would not start there if that's, let's start with adding, right?
Yeah.
Adding the good stuff.
Mhm.
So do you have any certain tests that you use when you're trying to like determine or using questionnaires to help know what
Yeah.
systems are most depleted?
Yeah, so I very much start focusing with the gastrointestinal tract because I feel like, when you're consuming foods devoid of nutrient and on top of that, you're barely absorbing any of the nutrients that you are very minimally consuming. If you're following the standard American diet, that would be the first place to look.
Mm-hmm.
So I run a lot of functional medicine tests when it comes to the gastrointestinal tract. I mean, do I absolutely need to? Usually I can take from intake forms and symptoms, what is going on and have a pretty good game plan to just move people in the right direction. So I really start there. Obviously, I look a lot into toxin overload, again, secondary to the standard American diet, unless you're doing it intentionally to reduce your harm, then you most likely are suffering from elevated toxin exposure. And then as a result, I would say, in addition to, I do also look at, production of proper neurotransmitters and whatnot and see if there are things that are kind of amiss there as well. But usually I start at the gastrointestinal tract and then I'll work my way from there if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, sometimes that it can be enough for some people.
exactly, because
Mhm.
usually you get that in, and you kind of start reaching into the other organ systems and you can kind of notice that things kind of start kind of coming in line just as a result of that.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like good, better, best, right? So it's like what can we implement to kind of get people in the right direction, even if it might not be the absolute and most ideal.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned toxicity because, in my mind, many of my clients who come sort of with mystery illnesses, it is related to either toxicity, something they don't have no idea they were exposed to, and it's hard to test for, but you kind of go multiple systems, multiple symptoms, a lot of neuromuscular stuff, and you're thinking, there's some kind of toxin there that we need to get out, or the imbalance of the immune system letting bugs that live in us sort of rise to the top and throw us off balance. So yeah, the gut is the place I start too. And I really go sort of down the list with people like first chewing, right? Doing those, taking your time with meals and relaxing, then bitters.
Yep.
And then I will add digestive enzymes, and then, betaine HCl challenge, kind of those sort of things, and see if we can get them absorbing their food, and
Totally.
then see where they are. Do you do elimination diets or that kind of thing for people with symptoms?
Yeah, definitely. If it calls for it, then I absolutely would. I do an elimination diet first before that's usually my go-to rather than some sort of food allergy testing, because I feel like that can kind of lead to thought patterns around food that's not really conducive to what we're trying to
I
do.
totally
Uh,
agree.
yeah, the use of like food mood logs is kind of my go-to. It also forces them to really like make the connection of what is my food doing for my body,
In my brain.
exactly, and how I feel, and energy and how I feel in my gut. And that kind of just slows them down for a second to really make that realization
Yeah.
of how their choices are impacting them. So yeah.
Yeah. The food mood journal, I use that too. And you guys, it's really interesting, especially there's so much charge around food that we eat. But I'd say like there's several different points, like when you think of eating the food and how it makes you feel, And then like the first bite, how you're feeling, because many times you will get a dopamine surge. And then after, after you've done eating it, how do you feel? And then 30 minutes later. So you get a few different points.
Yeah.
And I think doing that for trigger foods is so helpful for people because they'll go, dadgummit, I do see that after I finish eating a couple pieces of pizza, I feel crummy and I feel guilty. And then trying to find a way that you can shift the path or, or maybe it's even like just taking a little bit instead of, going all the way through a whole two pieces. But
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, that's very cool. So I'm not doing allergy testing anymore either. I did for a while. But I found that people just look like they're allergic to everything. And you really have to address the gut first before. Sometimes later, I might still do it if we've done the gut protocol and sort of help them and they're still having triggers. Yeah. So then I imagine you roll in some stress reduction and that kind of thing as you're working through.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously your healing will only go as far as the changes you're willing to do. And if your underlying issue is elevated stress and you're not really willing to kind of address that, then that will just be your upper limit in terms of what you're able to kind of do for the healing of your body. So yeah, I really try to instill the behavioral patterns as well. You can't really supplement or medicate out of, poor behavioral patterns.
That's so true.
And I do agree, like, stress is pretty ubiquitous. Everyone's like, oh, everyone's stressed. It's like, yes, but that doesn't make it good and it doesn't make it right. And we need to be, yet again, proactive with our stress management in order to take care of our bodies.
Right. It affects your sugar, you guys. So like when your cortisol is high from stress, and this can even be stress that comes from when you were a baby, right? Or when you're in utero. But when you are staying in that high stress state or you're feeling anxious, wired but tired or nervous, worried about the future, it takes your cortisol up and that takes your sugar up. Yeah. So if you're, especially if you are in a state of diabetes or metabolic syndrome, it is like core root thing essential that we work on that. And it doesn't mean you've got to meditate for an hour, right? What are the first things that you suggest, Jamie, to help people to begin to manage stress because it's such a big deal?
Yeah, from a behavioral standpoint, I would say even just like, 2 to 5 minutes of intentional breath work really kind of oscillate you into that parasympathetic state. I am a huge proponent about getting out into sunlight because that really does kind of get all of your chemicals in balance and ready for the day. Yeah. I would use adaptogens if needed, but I do say, again, this is a Band-Aid over what we're really trying to improve on from a behavioral standpoint. So if it warrants, I would do adaptogens, of which I'm a big proponent for if the season of your life, kind of calls for its use.
Right. Well, and just to clarify for people, some people know what adaptogens are. They are herbs that sort of listen to your body and can help you modulate towards normal. Correct. So the ashwagandha is one popular herb that helps you modulate towards normal. And usually there'll be supplements that have a couple of them. So they're kind of listening to your body and can be very, very helpful. It's not something I learned about in medical school. So if I was just watching the video back then, I would be like, oh, what's an adaptogen? So those are like help shift your body into that closer to normal state. So much of our body's normal is what we tell it. So, and so we tell it things by food. Food is information. It's giving instructions to your body. And so, I think that, I actually try and get people, even when they're trying to lose weight, to eat more food. Usually I'm like, you're going to have to eat more food in order to lose weight because our body will hold on to it if you're not giving it enough calories, right? So do you ever do loading with people? Like do an increase at first in caloric intake in those who are really low?
Yeah, usually, and that's a good point in terms of like because a lot of people that I see when it comes to seeking support for metabolic syndrome reversal, the common denominator is that they've been struggling with this for X amount of years, whether it be maybe really an entire lifetime. And they've tried everything under the sun, and everything under the sun usually means some sort of severe form of depletion of the body, of which, let's be thankful to our body that it's been able to kind of keep up with all of these fluctuations. And now it's gotten really adapted to these, ebbs and flows and dietary intake that we've put it through. So yes, I would say usually it would be, slowly incorporating more foods, both from a macro and micronutrient standpoint. But again, secondary to that, looking at the gut for sure, just because even if we're not healing that, if we're making the changes not being assimilated, then we're not going to see the results come to fruition.
So
So
true.
it's usually like definitely kind of parallel one another.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that, I mean, in the world of metabolic syndrome reversal, what I'm really trying to like make people understand, I guess, is that the true healing comes from supporting it and not further, depleting and harming through all of these severe dietary, like you can call it fads, so to speak.
It's so true.
And on top of that, potential pharmaceutical medications that are exacerbating that issue. Not to say that there isn't a time and space for it, but there's things that need to be worked on, from a diet and lifestyle standpoint to really see the results that you want.
Yeah. And the other thing that you mentioned at the beginning is that people have this idea that they go out and do a bunch of cardio. And that sometimes can lead to more stress on the body. So when I'm trying to help someone, especially somebody who's carrying extra weight, and it's hard to exercise, I really begin by focusing on isometrics and just a little bit of resistance exercise, because sometimes you can really making sure somebody has adequate protein, start to help with them shifting from fatty tissue into muscle tissue. And resistance, we're finding, is extremely important for your insulin sensitivity and your metabolic rate. So it can be a very easy way for people to start to change their body composition. Are you using a bit of resistance exercise, or when do you add that kind of thing in for people? Or do you wait until somebody's really more balanced in the gut before you adding it?
I would say, so I'm a huge proponent of resistance training, huge proponent. When people are voicing interest, in the incorporation of resistance training, I'm all for that. I am, though, very forthcoming in terms of exercise is self-induced stress. It's self-induced inflammation, for the long benefit of what you get out of it from like a hormetic standpoint. However, what my gauge is not necessarily like the gut part of it, but where's your central nervous system? Like, are you better? Like, are you at a place to take on this stressor, or are you at a place where you need to really focus on more restorative patterns of exercise? And then eventually we'll kind of shift it over to something that's a little bit more rigorous. So I would say more based on that. If someone comes in, they're like, I am a stressed out full-time mom of X amount of kids, and I want to get into the gym and I'm start lifting all the heavy weights. I'm like, we're not doing that. How about we focus on doing some yoga, some light, Pilates or something like that. And then I'm all for that game plan, but I don't think we're there just yet. We really, again, going back to the thought of supporting the body rather than berating it with more stress and inflammation. That's kind of where my mind, it's like, that's usually how I kind of handle the situation.
So the way you can kind of think of it is different things are for different people, right? But where is your stress level? And what does exercise what has it done for you historically? I mean, there's some people who exercise really does lower their stress, and they're stressed because they're not fitting in exercise, right? But Exercise, the benefit of exercise is not the exercise, because when you do the exercise, you're actually damaging your body, right? It's the recovery afterwards. And so if you can't handle, if right now, I was hearing Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. If you can't handle a hard workout, it's not going to help you to dive in there and do that. And some people are like, they want to go whole hog. We have to start gradually. And I think yoga, like, gentle flow yoga is one of the most beautiful ways for you to control that nervous system, right? Which is so important. And once you get that nervous system under control, then it's easier to launch into some exercise. Yeah, my husband does these crazy long runs every week. And yesterday he said he's going to start to run a marathon a month just for fun. I'm like, this is not healthy, babe. It's not healthy. What are you doing? Right. Yeah. Like, but I need to.
Cool. I mean, there's this one specific client that I'm thinking of where I actually had to kind of pull exercise out of his routine a little bit because it's just not serving him at the moment. You know, it is his mental decompression. It is his me time, which I fully understand. And I can totally I understand that because it's the same for myself. But again, if the season of your life requires you to really just slow it down a little bit, then that's just what needs to happen. And not to mention, it's like, if you're exercising, you're not seeing the outcome of the hard work that you're putting in, then there's your body speaking to you. Your body's telling you something. And usually what that means, it just needs a little bit more support and a little bit more rest until it's ready to kind of get back and get back to that grind again,
Right. Well, because you guys, our body, at different ages, our recovery time will change, right? So when I was working with people in this isometric gym where we measured resistance on like a single 10-second push, what we saw is that for people who are 50 or older, and let's say, so we're going to go through a body routine where you have 10-second, give it all you got, like a press or something like that, that many people needed a full week to get stronger, to rest that muscle after like a single, like try and recruit all the muscle fibers you can. And I think that's, it's one of the reasons why, having seen that happen, I know the power of an isometric workout. And it's a place where there's some, as we get older, we aren't using all our muscles. It's a place you can just start. And the other thing is, I think about, well, stretching is such an important, we can transition people into that more flex routine and stretching routine. And so they still feel like they're working out and they're getting their body really moving.
Yeah. And it's still a net positive towards what it is that they're wanting to achieve. Definitely.
Well, I think that, so let's sort of recap some of the important points, you guys, for wanting to use functional medicine, food, and a little bit of biohacking to reverse your diabetes. Number one, we have to have a paradigm shift towards, I think that Jamie was talking about this, supporting versus removing. So more of the good, right? Gradually getting more of the good, making sure that your gut is working, right? To support that, getting all that good in. Other thing that we talked about was, of course, stress reduction and moderate exercise according to what you need. And I mean, I think that what we want to say is, you guys, there's huge hope. Even if you've tried a lot of things, Jamie has a wonderful program that can individually personalize your program to manage whatever's happening in that body. By first, we want to evaluate, checking using functional medicine labs and things like that. Attention to the gut, loving on it, and then a personalized strategy incorporating healthy food as nutrition. I mean, food as information, right? And then, as a self-proclaimed biohacker, I mean, I definitely would be adding a continuous blood glucose monitor, CGM, NutriSense is a company that you can order directly from. You don't need a doctor's order, and they have a nutritionist that will talk to you. Have you used NutriSense at all, Jamie?
I have, yeah. And it's invaluable data that you attain. Again, I think it's another one of those, it's like it gives you information in real time about how things, either food or more external factors, can impact your health. One of the big things that I noticed actually with NutriSense, not to digress too much, is like how getting sick impacts your blood glucose levels. Because I remember when I was wearing that, I got a cold at the time. It was just pretty fascinating to kind of understand, like, whoa, how is that immune system like impacting my ability to manage my blood glucose? So yeah, no, huge fan of the CGMs, have used NutriSense myself, and it's a wonderful, wonderful piece of technology to be able to implement into your overall healing protocol.
Yeah, it really is a game changer. The other tech, we use phototherapy patches in our office that can turn on younger genes. And those are, I think that can be helpful to see what happens in conjunction with the CGM, right? When you wear the phototherapy patches. And so that's something that we implement in our clinic. Also, microcurrent, frequency specific microcurrent can influence by our body is it's an electrical system. And and I believe that one day all physicians will use these kind of tools, light, current, magnetic fields. It won't be crazy, right? And there's a lot of ongoing research on how frequencies can change protein expression in the body. Light, of course, can change protein expression in the body. So I like to look into those ways that can give people a little boost, but none of it is a replacement for that basic, that we have to find something that works, that we can sustain. Keep doing it tomorrow, then the next day. Yeah. Well, so Jamie, how can people reach out to you if they want to partner with you in a program or get some wisdom from you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can find me at my website, jamiecampbellnutrition.com.
Okay.
That's a great way to connect with me. They can also find me on social media, namely on Instagram. My handle is @it's Jamie Campbell. So definitely reach out with any questions. Happy to talk, happy to support in any way I can. You know, my whole thing is empowerment through education. You don't know what you don't know. And I feel like there's a lot that's not known out there when it comes to people's ability to really take back their power in health, and, you know, not just for themselves, but for their future generations. It's got to start with you. I'm a huge, I fully believe that we need to make a change now, to be able to see that paradigm shift.
Power of the people. Power of the people. Well, that's why I do these interviews, because everybody has something interesting to add. We have to pool our collective knowledge and understand that no one person knows it all, right? Your doc does not know it all. And if they say they do, then they're a little diluted, I have to say. I mean, so no, we need to seek out the answers, and then try and find communities where, confirm, because just because somebody says something in a charismatic way on YouTube, it doesn't make it necessarily true. Right. So we do need to do our research. And if you guys want to ask any questions or have ideas for podcasts, shoot me an email, clinic@feelgoodfunctionalmed.com. I'll put that below, and I'm going to put the link to Jamie's site below. And thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. I really love that.
This is wonderful. Great chatting with you.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say bye to our live streamers, and then you and I can talk for a second. Okay.
Okay, great.